Plus one.
Welcome back to Plus One. It's your fearless moderator, CH, and I am here with Sam Steffania. He is the CMO of Remix.gg. He is the host of Gamified. He is the co-founder of Wolves Now. Welcome to Plus One, Sam.
Dude, it's an honor. Thank you, Chris. With somebody with a resume like yours wants to hang out with somebody like me, it means a lot. I appreciate it. Thanks for taking the time.
Anytime, man. Well, one of the reasons I wanted to have you on the pod is I'm trying to get my generation of executives in gaming to have more exposure to Gen Z, because one of the things I've noticed is new Gen Z folks that are coming into the industry are coming in a completely different way. I came in through corporate America, met a lot of people at conferences, stuff like that. You came in through a completely different path, completely different social circles, and what I've noticed is it's kind of insulated the people who are making a lot of decisions in gaming from the perspective and the thinking of Gen Z. So you're one of the smartest guys that I know in gaming and Gen Z, and I wanted to bring you on to just kind of expose people to your perspective and what you're up to. Talk a little bit about how you got into the industry in the first place.
Oh, thanks, man, for the kind words. Yeah, so I got into the industry in 2020, 2021, right around COVID. I had actually been extremely sick and was able to use that as kind of a reset in my career, which was a great opportunity to do something more aligned with what my passion is, which is video games. Before that, I was in social media. Me and my brother grew a YouTube channel to 15 million subscribers, and we kind of hit like the limitations of what we thought we could do there. So I passed that business off to him and decided to move on. Found Twitter and this sort of like niche gaming community, and was able to use that as an opportunity to really like create my own content, my own voice. And so much of what I wanted to do too was not just talk about, oh, this game is sick, like let's stream it on Twitch, but to your point, like reach out to founders to be able to understand why they were making the decisions they were making, why certain games got funded and others didn't, why a game could raise $300 million and somehow still be trash. Like I had all these curiosities, and the best way for me to be able to answer that and engage with that was to enter the space myself. And luckily, well, with a combination of factors, I was able to make a show that ended up being quite successful and was able to recruit talent like you to come on. So super excited with where I'm at now. But as far as gaming goes, I mean, I've been a addicted World of Warcraft player for probably a decade. Spent way too much of my high school years. I wanted to be a StarCraft 2 pro gamer, which led me down the sort of esports route. Unfortunately, I suck at StarCraft 2, so it wasn't in the cards for me. But all these things kind of converged now in my early 30s to be able to do what I do now, which I'm incredibly grateful for, but very much not the corporate way of getting into it, to your point.
And did you just decide I'm going to make gaming content? I mean, and you just started at zero? Is that how it started?
Yeah, I had 1,000 followers on Twitter at the time, and they were all from my previous, like, I think I made one tweet, and it was, in association with something we were doing on YouTube. So I got a bunch of people that were unaffiliated to follow me back in like 2012 or something. And then I took the account back over in 2021 and was able to grow it from scratch from there, making, gaming content.
Wow. So I want to get into some of your different jobs. Like a lot of people in Gen Z, you don't have one job, you have like three. So the most recent is CMO of Remix.gg. What is Remix?
So Remix, exactly to your point of Gen Z, we're trying to be the TikTok of gaming. And I think that this is going to be a pretty crowded vertical in the next couple of years. But essentially what that means is a swipeable feed of playable games. So not viewing gaming content, actually playing the games yourself. Everything is vertical, just like TikTok. And then also the ability to create user-generated content. So all the stuff that you see on TikTok is generated by the users. We want to do the same thing by virtue of allowing people to vibe code. So you use AI to code these games, and then you're able to distribute them on the same platform. We do all these things to make sure that you get a certain amount of viewership, and if it's getting a bunch of thumbs ups and that flame emoji is like going crazy, then that means we're going to keep distributing your game for you. You'll be able to monetize inside of the platform. So obviously TikTok has its creator programs and TikTok shop referral links and stuff like that. We're approaching our own form of monetization, and One of the things that we think is really cool is we're going to allow people to have their own shops so that they can decide how to monetize. If you want to gate levels or energy or gems or equipment or whatever it may be, like that's on you to figure out. And that's part of the experience that people will decide if they enjoy or do not.
So one of the things that so I've seen this thesis from a few different developers who have been trying to do the TikTok of gaming. Um, I think you guys have done a really good job of taking a lot of Web3 ideas and learning from them. Not necessarily in all cases incorporating blockchain, but more learning from Web3 community building and distribution. So, from a distribution perspective, one of the things I've been impressed by is that most people who have been doing this kind of thesis have been in the app model. But the problem with the apps is it's very difficult to near impossible to break through right now with an app in the app store, just given the the difficulty of user acquisition and how you get users there. And it almost feels to me like it's going to happen the other way, which you have to get some other form of distribution where people find about you and then they'll install your app, and it has to be more copacetic with social media. And one of the things that I've been impressed by is you guys have broad distribution for Remix. So where are all the places that I can access Remix right now?
Yeah, I appreciate you acknowledging that. So right now you can get it on Farcaster, which is a decentralized social media app with maybe like 1 to 2 million people on it. You can get it on Telegram, which obviously has like a billion people. They're all sort of low value, so to speak, from the business side. And then you can also get it on World App, which is actually our biggest distribution funnel. Surprisingly, people don't realize that, but World App was so excited, along with Farcaster, to just have content on the platform. And one of the things that our platform does really well is whenever you bring Remix onto the stage, that means that you get actually like 1,350 games right now, and it's improving every day. And so they're super excited to have sort of an endless funnel of content, because usually you bring a game on and it's like, okay, well, now you have one racer that like 0.5% of your audience might like for a few minutes, and it just doesn't really have the same sort of staying power. And then the last place is the Base app. So Base is a blockchain that's rolling out sort of their own version of an everything app. But we've, yeah, to your point, had a lot of success by distributing to these places where they're just excited to get content, and it'll help co-market for us. And we've grown to 750,000 or so users right now, just by using that strategy. Not too much marketing spend, and then not having a standalone app yet.
Well, and I know nothing about World App. What is World App?
So World App, you guys might know from seeing. So Sam Altman is one of the co-founders of World App, and he made it to basically like fight against dead internet theory, where like
Yeah.
everybody's a bot. So it's supposed to be sort of like, you know how people talk about China and having like a social credit score? It's supposed to be like your online social credit score. So the way that they're doing it is they set up these ominous looking silver globes that you guys can Google. They looked horrifying. And you basically scan your eyeball. So you go up to it and you like give them your passport and you scan your eyeball, and it affiliates your retina signature with your passport. And now they know exactly who you are on the internet. And so World App launched WorldCoin and basically gave people like World Coin distribution for like airdrops for signing up. And so they got all these people in like LATAM and South Africa and stuff like that, who the money was like really meaningful for. Some people in America and Europe too, but obviously we have a lot more privacy concerns. But the cool part is we know that they're real users using it because we have their retina signatures. So there's that.
This sounds like a very Sam Altman idea.
It really is. It's the ultimate Sam Altman idea.
I, I was listening to Tim Dillon yesterday on Rogan, and he was talking about Peter Thiel giving all these lectures about how he's not the Antichrist. And I'm like, yeah, those guys in Silicon Valley are a little disconnected right now. But I'm glad that it's bringing you game users. At least it's bringing you gamers, right? At least they can play games while they're being spied on by Sam Altman.
That's right.
So Farcaster, how much? So Farcaster is basically it's a unique platform. It's a decentralized social network. So it's sort of like if Twitter was kind of a combination of Twitter and TikTok, was open sourced, the back end of it, and you could put any client on it you want. Is that more or less right? And anyone can make clients for it, so you can have multiple apps. So when you're on in Farcaster and in Base, both of those are connected to the Farcaster network, right?
Yes, that part is correct. And what I would say is the thing that makes these unique in, I guess maybe not even that unique anymore, is they're like mini app hosting ecosystems. So you go on Farcaster and then there's a whole app store you can download to open things up inside of Farcaster. The other unique thing is that they have what they call frames. So you'll be scrolling the social media timeline, and then as you're going, you might see a game or a music NFT or a news article. And instead of having to click that and another browser window opens up and now you're deplatformed, you actually can just view it inside of this frame. And that's actually the origin of what Bobby and Charlie saw that made them create Remix. Was they were like, oh my God, like just playable games inside of these frames, and you never leave the social media, but you can play all these different experiences and stuff. That really, really inspired them. So originally the company was called Farcade, to be like Farcaster Arcade, and then they spun out into four different platforms. And now we're working on our own standalone mini app, and we were like, okay, maybe the Farcaster name has sort of like, reached its limitations. And that's whenever we rebranded a few months ago. But it's really brilliant as far as what they created in order to sort of grassroots market the app originally.
So, are you expecting that there will be more of these types of super apps in Web 2 as well, and that's going to be a major form of distribution for you guys?
Yeah, I didn't always feel this way, but based on my experience with social media, and we had a lot of success on YouTube, but we also took that to Instagram and TikTok and Facebook and everywhere. I expected everybody to really carve down into their own niche. So like maybe this one's the super heavy gaming one, and this one is obviously Twitter's the written content, and then TikTok is the short form video content, and then YouTube is the long form video content. And I'll accept I was wrong about that. Instead, what we've seen is everybody sort of ubiquitously adopting the same features and then competing for sort of the same eyeballs. Like even Twitter now has a video feed that's scrollable like TikTok. And obviously we've seen Instagram do it, Snapchat has done it, YouTube Shorts, and everybody is just adopting the exact same things. And so because of that, I have to imagine that we're going to see something similar in this category of like super quick to cycle through video games. And then obviously AI being the great unlock for making a massive amount of games in a short period of time, hopefully that don't suck. But dude, we're even seeing it like Netflix has their gaming category, and that's been famously kind of botched. But at the same time, I downloaded Peacock last night because they had the NFL football game. And guess what? They have the exact same row of games. It's like quizzes and all these hyper casual whatever.
Mm.
LinkedIn also has games in the exact same like one bar of games that you can click on. And so everything is just be kind of becoming like everything else. And that's why we're trying to take a different approach. To your point, all the versions of Remix that I've seen that are competitors have all started with like, we are an interesting product. And I think that like that's fine. You might get people to open it up and try a couple of times, but if I make a game and I put it on your feed and nobody plays it, like
Mm.
I'm churning immediately. Like I don't care if it's the coolest game on earth, because I can play my own game anywhere. I could do my own thing anywhere. I could do it in Grok and never distribute it at all. So if I can't get you thousands of plays on your awesome game, hopefully millions of plays on your awesome game, like you're never going to use me as a platform. And so our goal is really to make sure that if people are putting amazing things on our platform, we have millions of users to distribute it to, and obviously the monetization rails and stuff like that. And so I think that's a unique approach, but again, it won't be forever. At some point, somebody with a billion users will just adopt this same thing and have it in their platform. So we've got this window that we really need to capture as a startup.
I think though that you have a different approach on it, that from the way a lot of people are thinking about it, which is still very monolithic app based, that you have an opportunity if you can establish that distribution. And I have some ideas for you that I can share offline.
Please.
But if you can establish that distribution, you're right. It's like if I'm going to vibe code a game, I can go anywhere to post that, right? So why would I post it to Remix? Because it can bring me the most views, it could get me the most monetization. I mean, you know how, I mean, that's how this stuff works, right? Is creators follow the money and they follow the attention. Are you, uh, is there a way? So one thing I've been thinking about is, um, how do you create kind of a copacetic loop between traditional social media and something like Remix? So is there a way to, like, everyone's got LinkedIn profile, right? If I can create my game in my LinkedIn profile and drive people right to it from my TikTok account or from Instagram or whatever, it feels like that, and it could just pop over pop over my app. It feels like that can drive a lot of distribution. Are you guys looking at how to distribute through those traditional platforms as well?
I know that there's a product called Hive, which is going super deep into this. Potentially, there's like a partnership with a company like that that could help facilitate it. I think, though, to my previous point, I imagine all of these companies are going to adopt some kind of frame technology at some point. Because if you look at Twitter and their algorithm, famously over the past couple of years, they've basically made it impossible to put any external links at all on the website and get any kind of viewership on your tweet, unless it's like tons and tons and tons of people are sharing it and retweeting it and stuff. It will die on the vine and get like 40 views. And so my thinking is, well, what's the next step for them to be able to keep you on platform but also give you more diverse content? And it is this kind of frame technology. And so as with most of the things that we talk about with this product, it's like, do we build it or do we just wait for everybody to catch up? Because so often, especially in the AI space, it's like we have thought about building probably 15 different things that were just solved by us waiting another 6 months for like OpenAI to figure it out and give us the solution for it. And so that's actually probably one of the single most difficult things about the company as a whole is that, like, deciding what we need to do for sure and what we need to allow everybody else to do, and like the market will kind of meet us where we need to be in 6 months or a year from now. But it's a really fun problem to solve for, because it's awesome to just wake up and be like, oh my god, like Grok 4 just fixed this thing, and it's like kind of a birthday present every time, you know.
Yeah, I mean, I started vibe coding, I don't know, a year ago or something like that, and I've kind of tried it and then stopped and then tried it, wait a few months and try it. I coded like HTML stuff and a little bit of Python and whatnot when I was younger. And vibe coding has kind of gotten me back into that, which, I like sharpening my skills there. But it wasn't until I'd say probably the last month or so that I've been able to make a complete game. Like Claude Code, it is the closest I've gotten to type in the game that I've been working on as a kind of a test for Remix. It's not the greatest game I've ever made, but it's a
Sure.
but it's but it's something to test. The Claude Code is the closest I've gotten to, like, type in something and it does what you want, right? And I think you guys are really smart to lean into the vibe coding thing, but obviously other people are doing that too. But it looks to me like the quality of the games that are forming on Remix are a cut above what I'm seeing in other places. And especially when I got into that Discord, I was like the community, like, there's something going on in the community here, because you can see lots of really creative apps being talked about, and people supporting each other. Talk about some of the things that you're seeing in terms of the game development, the quality of games, what you're seeing in the community.
Yeah, where we're at right now with vibe coding, the way that I describe it is like we've removed probably 98% of the friction of making games, but that last 2% is like pretty daunting, and it'll take a long time to really get there. So the 2% is the difference between like me sort of like struggling to put together a game and somebody being able to create what's actually like a pretty impressive experience that I'd be proud to put out there. I actually just tweeted today, there's a game called Based Poker Quest, and it's a match five game instead of a match three game. I don't know if you've played it yet, but basically it's like, yeah, 20 cards, and you're trying to put together the best poker hand you can. And then when you clear out cards, you more drop down, so you have new ones to pick from. And while you're doing it, there's quests to be able to complete that give you more time and bonus points and stuff. Super thoughtfully put together, tons of cool animations and stuff. And that was made by Inside the Sim, who's probably the best builder on the platform, if not, top five. and he has a really sophisticated thing where basically he like he makes his code externally and has a system architecture so that he can isolate things and tell the AI only work on this 3% of the code and ignore the other 97%. And those kinds of behaviors and sophistication is like stuff that a year from now I don't think is going to be necessary at all. But for the
Right.
time being, that's what separates him from the pack. And we've been lucky enough that he really wants to be involved. He actually led a month-long seminar for us and had a bunch of builders in there weekly on Saturdays coming together to be able to learn his system. So now we have like a dozen or 15 people doing that as well. But that's really the sweet spot right now, is finding people that have a little bit of coding knowledge, a little bit of technical understanding in order to be able to really create something special. That being said, I firmly believe, and this is probably a symptom of my bias from working on social media for so long, I think that the thing that's actually going to drive growth isn't necessarily like an amazing game, even though I believe Based Poker Quest could be like top 10 on the App Store by itself. I think that the real thing that's going to solve it is mimetic games, because
I
that's
totally
really
agree.
thank you. Yeah, it's like the difference is like we've been able to make good games for a long time, but we haven't been able to make them super quick. And so if we can make really fun, quick loop games that are like the Coldplay concert, the girl turning around and hiding her face or whatever, and make it in 2 hours, then ship it onto the platform and you're swiping and you see it and you get to play and you laugh and you send it to a friend, whatever. Like that's how we get like 10 million users overnight, you know? And so I'm super, super excited for the games to just get to the point where with GGP5 or whatever it may be, you're able to get a game from 0 to 1 in like 15 minutes and ship it and get it on the platform with the imagery that you wanted and all that stuff. And we're getting pretty damn close. We're getting pretty damn close. Somebody did one for Ibiza Final Boss. If anybody saw the guy with the funny
Yeah,
haircut.
yeah, yeah. That was great.
Yeah, yeah, the Flappy Bird.
It was a Flappy Birds game, right?
It was, yeah. And it had like lasers going in the background and EDM music and stuff. It was really clever. It was clever. And I think that something like that will pop off and get us tens of millions of plays, yeah, in a very short period of
And
time.
it looked great. It wasn't, I mean, that's the other thing with some of this vibe coding, art. Like it doesn't necessarily look like shit, right?
Yeah.
It's I've been pretty impressed with some of those mimetic games, and I agree. I think one of the biggest problems that games has had over the last 2 years, actually, or since COVID, has been. Um, I feel like the games industry just moves too slow, and culture on social moves too fast.
Yeah.
And so what's happened is that we're constantly outside the cultural conversation. And part of what you're seeing on Roblox, I think, is that it's able to capitalize on a culture better, right? Because it's able to move much faster. If a game comes out on like something like Only Up, right, that comes out on Steam, that becomes like a mimetic, game, very quickly gets knocked off on, Roblox. It gets knocked off on Fortnite. And so it just, the speed of development in Unity, Unreal, whatever, right now, and just how quickly people are able to put things out versus some of those UGC platforms is like night and day. And then what you'll be able to do with some of this vibe coding stuff will be night and day, and it completely changes a lot of assumptions, I think, around gaming. Because if I can make a mimetic game, I'm not building that with the idea that it's going to have like some deep meta game and it's going to have a lot of retention and blah blah blah. But if you have a tip model, for example, like TikTok or whatever, and people can tip, you could probably make a fair amount of money on tips.
Yeah.
Or if there's some deeper meta game where I can, have an avatar and get, items for my avatar that I can use cross game or whatever it is, right? If there's some kind of cross game meta around monetization where each little game contributes to my overall, like, I think there are things like that where you can start to make a business around these disposable games, and that's where we start to get back into we start to get consumable like TikTok, right? And I think we're dying for that right now.
Yeah, I love that you brought Only Up. That was one of the first like paradigm shifting moments for me psychologically to recognize exactly what you're talking about. Because I think it might have been a week, but I'm pretty sure it was 5 days from that game launching to it catching virality to somebody recreating it in UEFN was the one that popped off first, I believe. And so it was like probably the first 2 days before they even realized that it was worth knocking off, which means they probably made it in about 72 hours in UEFN, distributed. And then I think in 3 days they had more concurrent players than only up did, because obviously it was free and it was on this thing that people already had downloaded and all the things that go into it. And so what we're talking about is taking that already insanely compressed time horizon, which is like 5 days a year ago. So it's probably even shorter, 48 hours now. And we're going to take that and make it like an hour. Like how fast can something be a meme on the internet and then be a meme on our platform? And whoever is the fastest probably gets shared the most, right? It's like whoever posts breaking news gets like, let's say 60% of the views, and then everybody else is fighting over 40%. They kind of share it. And so that whole compression of time is just going to get to the point where it's like near instantaneous. It's eventually we're all just fighting to make things faster and faster, but also to give people opportunities to earn in this new weird environment where like we're in a gig economy instead of everybody having salary jobs. And I think that another piece of it is this social gaming where like the reason that we call ourselves Remix is because we actually believe that the future of this platform is you and your friends remixing games back and forth and being able to create games socially, so that like I add a couple of features and then I send it to you and you're like, yeah, but it's not fast enough. And I wish that like there was a boss level, and then what if there was this power up, and like maybe there's an inside joke for that teacher that you hate or whatever it may be. And then you send it back to me and I'm like, oh, this is sick. But like, what if we did this? And then you send it to another friend. And before you know it, like five of you have worked on this game together. You distribute it on the platform. And then imagine if like a pool of money just came out of thin air because you and your friends messed around and made games. Like that would just be the most insane experience that I could ever imagine as a kid that just like played World of Warcraft endlessly. It's just almost impossible for me to wrap my head around the 16-year-old version of myself, like experiencing game culture that way. And I believe that there's definitely a ton of room for that. And then that obviously becomes viral in its own right of, hey, I made this game, check it out. And then you find out you can remix it and all these other things that go into it. I heard somebody say this the other day. They were like, imagine when we didn't have computers or the internet, explaining to somebody who's only ever read books what it's like to click a link.
Yeah.
Like, it takes you to like another page, and then you're on this other part of the internet, and it's just impossible. And I think that's kind of where we're at. It's like impossible to really wrap our heads around what it's going to look like because we just haven't ever experienced anything like it.
Well, Sam, I'm old enough to remember when hyperlinks were introduced, and
Yeah, yeah. Was
uh,
that just like mind blowing or what?
it was pretty. I mean, it was pretty mind blowing. It started with this thing called HyperCard. I don't know if you know that, but Apple had
No.
this. Apple had this app builder that you could basically build. It was kind of the web before the web, but it wasn't networked necessarily. Although they had some networking, but it was like local. But basically, it was like a little app builder, like GUI app builder, and it introduced hyperlinks, and that was one of the
Sick.
first places you had hyperlinks before the web. But yeah, that was kind of a like people were like, "Oh man, the hype!" It was kind of how people talk about the metaverse, where it's like very heady and like cyberpunk or whatever. Like it was
Yeah.
very hyperlinks were like one of those mind blowing things. I mean, so it's when I hear you say that, I'm like, "Oh, I'm fucking old." Well, so one of the things you're really strong at, and I think a lot of people in your generation are strong at, is community building. And like I said, I'm very impressed with what I'm seeing in the Discord. Your role as a marketer is very different from like my former heads of marketing, who came from more traditional backgrounds or UA or whatever, where you're almost more of what I would call what they used to call an evangelist in the day, which is, influencer isn't quite the right term. It's a little bit of that. It's a little bit of developer relations or developer evangelism. But it's also consumer facing marketing. Like, how are you thinking about building community? Because it seems like that's the tools are great, the distribution's great, but really the secret sauce is if you can get people invested in a community and making these things, and it feels like a competition or collaboration or whatever. Like, talk about your thoughts around how you're building that from a seed.
Yeah, I mean, really observant of you to recognize that, yeah, it's probably like 5 or 6 different roles that I'm doing in micro capacities versus being like the performance marketing guy. The way that I think about it is what sells better than just about anything is like a really good story. And I think that if we can have let's call it 10 different developers find a lot of success on the app, and both from the distribution side and from the monetization side, those stories are going to do so much marketing for us that it's worth all this time that we're investing, and whatever money or developer resources that we invest in making sure that these guys are able to do what they can at a high level, and they're satisfied and feel thought of and engaged with the app. I think a lot of times people feel like numbers will just, if I say we're really focused on making these 20 devs happy and we're also talking about being an app that a billion people use, it feels like a waste of time. But if you get one story of a developer that made like $100,000 and they've never made a game before in their life, like that will be absolutely mind blowing to hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people, if you're able to tell that story correctly. And so I think it's about figuring out where to invest your time, and also understanding that, like, for instance, we see a lot of stuff with like Pudgy Penguins or ChatGPT, or like let's actually use a really famous thing. Let's use Elon Musk. Why is it that Elon Musk can like make the Boring Company, for instance, like a billion-dollar company, even though most people can't tell you what it does? A, it's because he's really good at making technology and stuff, but B is because it has built-in marketing all the time. Everything he does has built-in marketing, because he could do one interview or one crazy moment or one t-shirt that he's like in a picture in a newspaper or whatever, and instantly it has more inbound than like probably everything I've ever done in my life combined, you know? And
Right.
I think that we're trying to do that same thing to a micro extent, which is like, instead of us spending every dollar in order to get some kind of conversion rate back, it's like you invest time and money and energy into these people that will create stories and moments and things that end up marketing for you. And it's much harder to track what the conversion rate and the amount spent versus whatever, the ROAS, or whatever acronym you want to throw on it. But at the same time, whenever you see people have really outsized success, it's usually because they did something like that, not just that they were like incredible at performance marketing and somehow beat out Rovio and King at competing for that ad space. So obviously we're going to do performance marketing. That's an important piece of the puzzle for us to kind of branch out. But I think that that element of it isn't lost on me. If you can have a strong community that advocates for you, like, I'm old enough to remember whenever we cared about word of mouth. It doesn't feel like we do anymore, but it's still super, super important
Yeah.
in my opinion.
Yeah, totally. Um, so that's a good opportunity to talk about some of the ways you generate word of mouth. One of those is the host of Gamified, which is a 2 hour panel show on Twitter every week. Can you talk a little bit about Gamified, why you started it, and sort of what the vision is and what you do with the show?
Yeah, thanks so much for coming on the last couple of weeks as well, Chris. It's been a pleasure having you. Yeah, so Gamified came about for a few different reasons. First, I'll start by telling people like why it's different, because I think that's a big paradigm shift. Whenever I ask people to come on the show, I always have to say, you need to listen to an episode first, though, because I don't want to disappoint you or surprise you or whatever. Because so much of the content that we
Hey Sam,
consume.
you're
Oh,
breaking up.
uh-oh, test test.
You're breaking up.
Maybe.
I don't know if it's on my end or your end. Yeah, it's on his end.
Test test. Are we back?
Yeah, yeah.
Awesome.
Riverside is so tricky with network. I'll ask the question again.
Thanks.
Um, so um, where was I? Um, oh, one. So one of the ways that you build community is through your show, Gamified, which is a 2 hour show on Twitter every week on Twitter Spaces. That's a panel show. You do an excellent job of hosting it. I'm always very impressed.
Thanks.
It gets very spicy. Can you talk about Gamified, how you started it, what your vision is for it, and sort of what you're doing at the show?
Yeah, thanks so much, Chris, for coming on too. It meant a lot to me, and hope to have you back again next week, or if not, in the future.
I
Yeah,
was
so
VIP. I
yeah,
was MVP.
That's right. Almost unanimously too, which almost never happens because we've got like 10 personalities on at the same time. And that's the piece that really makes it unique. Like so much of the content we consume is like this, one-on-one, or like Deconstructor of Fun, which I know we both listen to, is like four people, but it's always the same four people. And they kind of have their things, like some of them are mobile gaming, and then the Crest is the VC or whatever, you know. And I think that what we've been missing is like, how do we get, you know, creators and VCs and game founders all in the same room to debate things and be okay with the fact that they're going to disagree and it's going to get spicy. And that's really what we tried to create. And I've been super lucky that we've gotten an amazing circle of regulars that comes back every single week, and then a bunch of people that sort of swap in and out that keep the show fresh and alive. But part of the magic there, and part of the reason I made it that way, was it's on Twitter Spaces, which a lot of people don't even know exist. But it's essentially like a radio show on Twitter. So there's no video component, and because of that, we're able to get a lot of amazing people because they don't need to just come and stare at a camera. Because if so, I have 10 people on there. Sometimes it's half an hour before somebody gets to talk again, and I feel bad about that. But it's part of how you get so many opinions and dynamic points of view in one space at the same time. Also, being 2 hours can be a lot, but the amount that we cover and the amount of surface area that we can get on topics is just incredible. Like Paul Bettner, creator of Words with Friends, Age of Empires and stuff, has been a regular for a long time, and he always walks away from it, and he says on the show all the time, like, that's where he gets his feedback from other people and to see if he's moving in the right direction with his product now, which is Wildcard and Thousands. And I find that to be incredibly generous of him to say. And it means so much to me because I started it because I wasn't smart enough to be able to speak on these topics, but I really wanted to hear what everybody thought about them. And so it was an opportunity for me to be the facilitator of the conversation and then take a step back and say, how do I moderate this? So if I'm like me, but I'm in the audience, I'm the most satisfied because I got all these points of view and I got to learn, but I also laughed a few times. We always try to bring humor into it and stuff like that. And because of the amount of panelists that we bring on, it's really cultivated an amazing community of founders like Gabe Layden from Limit Break and stuff that listen to the show each and every week because they want to hear what other founders think. And I'm sure it's part of how your podcast has found success too, Chris.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I try to do, I'm just kind of starting out, but what the way I look at it is I'm trying to have conversations other people don't have because a lot of other people, and I feel like Gamified is one of those too, where I learned something when I listened to it that I wouldn't learn from listening to Deconstructor of Fun because it's a different focus, right?
Yeah.
And I'm very much, especially as someone who's in that space where I'm young enough to give back to young people in the market, but I've still got, I've got a limit on the rest of my career, right? So I'm kind of thinking about like I want to stay. I've always been a guy who like skates to where the puck is going, as opposed to, resting on laurels or whatever. And I'm just very interested in this idea of disrupting gaming and making it work better for everyone, right? And so I learn a lot from that pod, and that's part of the reason I wanted to have you on here is to expose people to how you're thinking. Who's the audience for Gamified, and what are the kind of topics you cover?
Yeah, so the audience, in my opinion, it's like a B2B show. But at the same time, there's a lot of people in what we call retail or consumers that do want insights into what we're talking about. I think, like, for instance, we go into the weeds on some things super deep where we'll talk about, some web3 product and their token generation event or whatever. That might be one small subject, but we also debated like Call of Duty versus Battlefield and the different approaches that they're taking to the market, and Call of Duty delaying and Battlefield having this uprise, but then the stats of Call of Duty absolutely dunks on Battlefield every year, and if it's going to be an upset and that kind of thing. And it's amazing how passionate everybody on the show is as well as gamers. Like everybody either likes Call of Duty or likes Battlefield, and they start fighting about it. So it's really B2B, but at the same time, it just doesn't take itself too seriously. And I
Yeah.
think that there's space for that. Like we want to be entertained, but we also want to learn while we're being entertained. And I think if you can hit that Venn diagram just right, that's when like the ultimate best content comes out. Easier said than done. Maybe not every episode slam dunks it, but it's been really, really cool to see how many founders reach out to me after episodes 2 and say, I really learned something and I love what you guys had to say. Or they say, I can't believe you had 10 people on the panel, not a single person said insert thing here, and then they'll tweet about it and it becomes another conversation after the fact. Like that is what I want to cultivate. And if anybody's listening to this and wants to check it out, we are on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. I'll just throw that out there too. If you're not a Twitter person, just search Gamified and you'll be able to find it.
Awesome. So one of your other jobs is co-founder of Wolves DAO, which is sort of connected to what you do at Gamified, and you are famous for every day posting for I don't even know how many days. Web3 gaming is inevitable. So what the hell is Wolves DAO?
Wolves DAO is an application only, extremely exclusive group of 300 people. We tried our best to create basically like the digital Soho House or something like that, the Dead Poet Society of Web3 gaming, because we noticed there's a few famous quotes about Web3 in general, like crypto, where 90% of the projects are just like absolute scams. Maybe 9% of the projects are trying really hard, but they suck. And then like 1% of the projects are that sweet spot of like trying hard and also have a chance at being successful, outside of just financially, like making a good product. And when we recognized that, we said, okay, well, if there's, let's say, 50,000 people in Web3 gaming, realistically, how many people can we have in a group and have high quality discussions, be super focused on things outside of just price action, wanting to learn, wanting to be self motivated, all those things. And we kept trying to expand beyond 300 people, and we would realize, dude, these people suck. Like we gotta trim it back. And we do something called a purge every single month where we kick out a certain amount of members depending on how we feel the community is. And actually, just this morning, I tweeted out we had the biggest purge of all time. 60 members got the axe, and so we're looking to recruit more now. But it's amazing when you go through that funneling process, you come down to the most incredible people that are, again, self-motivated, doing incredible things in the industry, really interesting to talk about, doing amazing events or networking in a really effective way. So many resources come out of it too. We had, I think, 3 or 4 people in the last 2 weeks from the organization get jobs in the space too, at like really prestigious organizations. Freeze going to Mythical, which we're all super proud of. Jace just got hired at Ronin and stuff. And so it's become a sort of badge of honor for people to be a part of this organization. And that's maybe the thing that we're the most proud of. But it's really people sharing resources, creating content together, hosting live events together, and networking and trying to make the entire space better, and therefore making their own individual lives and products better as well.
Yeah, I got purged like 6 months or something like it because I
Damn.
went in the Discord. I didn't meet the requirements.
Yeah. The thing I'll say, Chris, is the list of people that have gotten purged is arguably more impressive than the list of people still in the organization, including today.
I may put it back on my Twitter bio, ex-member of the Wolves.
We'll see what we can do.
Yeah. So one of the other things you guys did is you had a gaming house for a couple of years in a row at GDC, right? What was the purpose of that?
Yes, we call that the Wolves Den. Very, very not topical, on brand. And essentially, what we try to do is like, because we're a Web3 organization at our core, we noticed whenever we went to GDC, I went for the first time 3 years ago and had an amazing time, met some amazing people. But Web3 was still very much like uh, pox was put upon us. Nobody, we were the lepers of the group that people were a little intimidated by or didn't really want to engage with. And I wanted a place where people could gather outside of the event and really feel at home and get the networking that they were looking for and be able to, feel supported and do cool things. And so the first year we had the house, apparently it was a little too close to Skid Row. I'm glad to say that we had zero security incidents. Nothing was stolen. Nobody was harmed. The second year, which was this March, we had an absolutely beautiful place with a view of Alcatraz and the Golden Gate Bridge, and it was like 7 bedrooms. And we had, I think, 7 or 8 events the first year. This year we had 20 throughout the 5 or 6 days that we were there. And so we're really proud of how much it's sort of scaled up already and how much people have treated it as sort of their home base for GDC. But that's really what it is. It's like, where can I go at GDC and know for sure that I'm going to see incredible people, have incredible conversations, maybe get some deal flow, but also just enjoy myself. Like we do something that we call Alpha Night, and it's we invite 20 or 30 founders to come and give 5-minute presentations. And so this year we had on the third floor balcony, everybody's in the backyard. You get a microphone, 5 minutes, no slides, no bullshit, just 5 minutes of telling us things people don't know about your company yet. So preferably things that are unannounced, strategic pathway where you're going, things you're launching, what your vision has gone from to become. And it's amazing how much people are willing to tell us. Like they'll tell us things 9 months in advance to an entire group of 200 people in a yard, which is just insane. I think it speaks to the prestige of the organization. But really the goal is to create an environment where, again, that you're going to learn something, you're going to meet great people and stuff like that, outside of like the Westin hotel lobby and the Marriott that everybody insists that you just should hang out in. Like
So horrible.
it's a more, yeah, exactly. It's a more welcoming environment, I like to think.
Yeah, totally. And there's 24-hour free Korean barbecue, right?
More or less. I for sure Dota too. The barbecue comes and goes depending on how hungry we are.
Nice, nice. So, Sam, why do you believe Web3 is still inevitable?
I believe, and I know I'm not supposed to outsource my opinions, but I do believe it's important to like speak to people that are smarter than you and check what you believe against that. I've had a lot of conversations between the shows and the podcasts and stuff. I think we've done over 400 episodes between, if I count all of it together. And I've talked to so many people and I've said like, do you guys believe, like Paul Bettner, let's take him for instance, Words with Friends, Age of Empires, whatever. Do you believe, Paul, after you've conquered PC gaming, he did mobile gaming, and then he did VR gaming? He has one of the only successful VR titles of the past, 20 years or whatever.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, giga successful. And Paul, do you believe that there's any way after creating blockchain technology that we just at some point go, no, I think we should just rip it all out, or like nobody's going to use it because of these reasons why it's fundamentally flawed? And he always goes, not a fucking chance. Like, there's no way that we just ubiquitously like throw it away. It's too valuable. And the problem isn't that it's not valuable. The problem is that it's clunky and bad, like mobile phones were at first, and like the internet was at first, and like computer processors were at first. Like there's all these analogs that we have in other industries or that are super similar to ours, and we're seeing it now with like gasless transactions and super fast speeds of finality and these other terms that we use, to the point where like at some point integrating blockchain is going to be super easy. And so if it has certain value propositions, which I believe it does, and it's also super easy to integrate and doesn't cost a ton, and you're not afraid of being sued by the SEC and stuff, then if all those things come to be, which we're getting closer and closer to, the adoption of the technology is inevitable. Now, the piece that people take too far is they think by me saying Web3 gaming is inevitable, I must mean that the token that they own for sure is going to be worth millions of dollars. And the NFT is for sure the answer to all of their problems financially. And that's the part that I really dislike. It's not at all what I intend by saying it. But I would love to ask you the same question, Chris. What do you think it's inevitable? Am I full of shit? And if so, or if not, why?
I think it's inevitable. I think inevitable can take a long time. So the
Hmm.
question is sort of when. I mean, I agree with you that look when I got into the space, there were no when I started making my game, this was I don't know two and a half maybe 3 years ago now, but there were no smart wallets. And a transaction on Ethereum could cost hundreds of dollars some days,
Yep.
right? In 2021 or whatever. They were super slow, right? You had to do all kinds of stuff to make sure that your smart contracts didn't go haywire and run gas prices through the roof and create gas wars, all that kind of stuff. We never talk about that anymore. So the tech was really kind of completely different and very hard to use and not reliable, right? So we're in a very different place with the tech. I think you know one of the things for me as someone who's spent 5 years in the space now is I can't unthink Web3 anymore. So like when I go back to Web 2 games or talk to my friends who are making Web 2, I'm like, why are you fucking doing that? Just put that on the blockchain. Why isn't that tradable? Why don't you tokenize that? Why don't like I'm like like the things that I think about now are like capital formation and how do you create a model where your early believers can help kickstart you, and then they get an end game resource that then they can resell to players as your economy expands, and how do you create this kind of like kickstarted to scalable economy type model. Like those are the things that kind of turn me on in gaming right now, because part of the reason I did this, and you and I have never talked about this, but I was at Network. I spun this game out from Universal. That was a game called Funko Pop Blitz. So I had the Funko IP, I had all the Universal IP, I had Hello Kitty, I had Doctor Who, I had like a zillion Peanuts, a zillion franchises, right? And I thought this is going to be a marketing dream, because I'll be able to market to all these micro niche properties and just find all these ways to insinuate ourselves into culture. And that was right around the time that the App Store IDFA thing started, right? And I had been at Disney and Universal where anything we launched, because we had IP, would get featured. We get a ton of organics, and that just wasn't true anymore. Like Apple made
Mhm.
changes to the store that made it hard. Then we started doing UA, and I'm like, you can't even five. We've got the best IP that should be giving us lower, CPIs. We can't even fucking break out in that. I'm like, this market is toast. Like you can't launch any new games, and that's what attracted me to Web 3, was this whole new model of community driven development, and having your and the idea of having your community market for you and work on your game. Because the other thing I got tired of was like huge teams and all the management work that goes into that, and the bureaucracy that attracts, and it dilutes your vision, and everything becomes about managing all these people and getting them to work together against a vision, as opposed
Mhm.
to just being creative and like jamming, right? And so I was like, what if you could have a small core team, and then you have this extended team of your that are your that are your fans and your biggest supporters, and they can help market, and they can help create content, and they can help contribute in different ways, run community, whatever, and you rev share with them, and that becomes the way you staff your game and grow, is through community, not through hiring a zillion people and becoming a big corporation. And so, I still believe that those idea that those things are like good things and valid, right? And that we need a new way to distribute games, because what the app stores did, right, is they shut off, they turned themselves into walled gardens, right, where they basically shut themselves off from the internet. So just like you said with Twitter, you can't leak out. Well, Apple has made it very difficult to link in, right, or to get any kind of virality to drive your product in the App Store. And so it's created this problem where the people who were incumbents and had big games continue to benefit, because they can harvest their existing gamers, and they have high LTVs, so they can afford to pay the most. But then everyone else can't break through, right? And so I'm like, this model has to change, and people who understand gaming need to help change it. And so I think it's inevitable from that standpoint, that like something has got to change in the industry. And as you start to do that, and you look at how hard it is to make a fucking game, right? It's like a lot of the things that blockchain gives you for free, like the ability to transact. I mean, when I was at Club, few people know this, but Club Penguin got one of the thing that ultimately killed Club Penguin. There were like a million things that led up to it. But the reason we ultimately had to shut down Club Penguin Classic is because the payment platform that we were using was getting shut down by Visa, and we couldn't take credit cards anymore, and Disney didn't want to pay to rip it out and put in a new payment platform, because it was going to cost us like several $1 million to do, right?
Wow.
So that's what killed us, was the ability to take payments. If
Wow.
we had had blockchain, that would have been fucking trivial, right? But that
Yeah.
was a major to get that payment platform approved at Disney was probably, and Disney's too bureaucratic and whatever, but it took like 18 months of going through legal and finance and all these, because of all the regulations around money handling, right? And Disney wasn't set up at that time to be direct to consumer like they are today. So, you know, I think a lot of younger people don't appreciate all of these institutional barriers that existed and how expensive and difficult the technology was. Things like, gotcha boxes, leaderboard, like there's a lot of mechanics that we could just put on chain, and it's virtually free, right? And so, I think the problem in our space is it's like giving a thermonuclear weapon to a toddler. It's like you can do so much with the technology, but almost people don't know where to start, and it becomes a whatchamacallit where it's like, but what's it really good for? And I just feel like we need to drive simple use cases like tipping, trading, like those types of ideas. I was talking to some guys yesterday who were doing Roblox games, who are friends of mine, and they're like, yeah, it's all going limited edition items, in-game trading. They were talking about Grow a Garden and how Grow a Garden refreshes its store every 5 minutes, and all this kind of stuff. And I'm like, yeah, this is turning into, this is turning into what we've been doing with Web3, right?
Yeah.
So, ultimately, you're either going to be owned by, the problem with Roblox is, great, they're democratizing everything. They're also taking like 60% a 60% cut, right? After Apple's cut. So ultimately, if gamers want to make any fucking money, they're going to have to get beyond these mediated centralized platforms and do it on something like, Remix, right? They're going to have to get, and they're going to have to get on payment rails like crypto. So I do think it's inevitable, but I think that we have to decouple from the DeFi people who have fucked everything up for us, right? And God love them, right? They I may go that direction, right? Next, be more on the DeFi side, but so I don't have a problem with DeFi, but I think you can't financialize things before they're fun.
Hmm.
And I just think games need a different go to market. And I think having a bunch of kind of stock trader type mentality, day trader mentality people who are determining the direction of an entertainment product is like such a mixed mismatch, right? And it's such a niche, the crypto Twitter. We've just got to find a way to mainstream these concepts with regular people, which is what I was trying to do with Mystery Society, because I never made Mystery Society with the idea that it was going to be like for crypto Twitter necessarily.
Hmm.
I made it with the idea that we would it would be a good fit for the App Store, and we would be able to grow with like normie users, and that was kind of working for us. But what I found was all of the incentives around the VCs and everything else force you to focus on token launches, and and so much money. I mean, I spent probably $150,000 on legal fees just to get an entity in the Caymans and all this other shit that you don't need anymore, thanks to where the law is headed.
Yeah.
But it's like, so even for crypto, even for Web3 startups, the amount of money that was spent on technology, on legal costs, and all that stuff that you had to do, you don't have to do anymore. So I think it's gonna get. I just think we need to simplify the use cases. Like, my advice to you on Remix is like, the first thing I would put in is just tipping. Like, if you just give people tipping and they'll be like, no, I need a coin, and what do I get in exchange, and blah blah blah. It's like, hey, maybe we get there. Maybe that's a good idea. But like, just give people the ability to give money if they like it and see what happens, because the best micropayment platform in the world is crypto. That's what it's designed for, right? You see it on Zora. People, I tip people 17 cents here and there. It means nothing to me, right? Because it's no real amount of money. You could never afford to send that in Apple Pay,
Yeah.
because the cost per transaction is too high. So, I think once you get into this thing where it's kind of the tip jar economy on crypto rails, where it's cheap enough to do, and you've got this distributed network where I can make a game and it gets distributed all over the place. Those pennies can add up, right? And then you can start to layer into it, stores and cosmetics, and and buying hearts and whatever. But I think that as a technology, it's the right technology. We just have to find the right angle to mainstream it, and I think that is inevitable.
Dude, I love it. I appreciate the advice as well. Yeah, we've been going back and forth so much about monetization, and it's funny. I think another thing that I've learned being in crypto is sometimes giving people something that is intrinsically valuable is actually the wrong move. Like sometimes you need to remove all value so they do the behavior just for the sake of doing the behavior. And tipping is a perfect example of that. Like you don't get really anything for it, but obviously we see people on Twitch tipping all the time, you know? Patreon, I belong to or subscribe to Patreons. I literally don't use the service from. I treat it like a tip because I don't even want the exchange. I just want to say thank you for the content that I was already consuming or whatever it may be. And I do wonder sometimes if the monetization that we plan on rolling out would be better off just being, hey, you enjoyed the game, like give somebody some love, you know?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I think you guys will be able to experiment with it, right? But the beauty of crypto rails also is that if you want to change it, it's not going to be like like a major
$2 million
you know
to rip out. Yeah.
$1 million rip out and whatever. Like you can evolve very quickly. So Sam, thank you so much for the time. This has been a wonderful interview. If people want to learn more, want to contact you, where do they reach out?
Chris, thanks for having me, man. Incredible just to get to listen to some of your story too. The Club Penguin thing is still living rent free in my head. I wish we could just sit here and you could wax poetic about some of your experience. If people want to follow me, LinkedIn and Twitter are the two places I'm the most active. Twitter is where my shows take place. Spotify, you can also get them after the fact. They're all live shows, so you'll see whenever you listen to the podcast as well. It's pretty unfiltered, a little bit saucy at times to Chris's point, but hope you guys enjoy that. Really, those are the three places. And then, like you said, we do events at GDC. I was just at Gamescom. If anybody ever sees a Wolves DAO or Wolves Den event, I'm probably affiliated with that in some way. Come by and say hi.
Awesome, man. Well, thank you for being my plus one today, and thanks for the listeners for listening in. We'll see you next time.
Thanks, Chris.
Peace. Thanks, man.